Welcome back to the People Track. We are ending up day one with a wonderful panel that I'm very excited about. It's called Being a CEO in AM. And joining us, we have appropriately a panel full of CEOs. So first I'm bringing to the stage our moderator for this panel, Debbie Holton. And as I bring everyone else on, Debbie, you can turn your camera on and begin. Melanie, Christina, please turn your cameras on as well.
Hey everyone, looks like a great panel.
Hey.
Hi there.
Welcome. I'm super excited about this panel too. So really looking forward to all the discussion, get your questions into the Q&A and vote those questions up and down. We've got just a wonderful, this is the power panel right here. So
you ladies have a wonderful panel.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kira. So listen, welcome back everybody to Type and this great event. I'm so excited that I got like the cream cheese job of the day, which is having a conversation with these amazing women. Very excited about this whole event and for this group here. So be sure to get your questions into the Q&A. We're going to leave lots of time for interaction and for really kind of getting to know this group and all the wonderful things that they've accomplished and how they've, cracked this egg of getting to the top of their field. So I'm going to go around the screen here and let the panel kind of just introduce themselves real quick, 60 seconds. Just tell them a little bit about yourself and your company. And I'm going to start with Christina because she's immediately to my left or right, whichever way you want to look at it.
Hey everyone, I'm Christina. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Makelab. We're a 3D printing service bureau in Brooklyn, New York. We got started in 2017. And we really target the design and highly creative professionals and really work to enable easier creation, prototyping, and iteration. I myself, my background is in industrial design. I went to Pratt. My first touch point with 3D printing was at Pratt, although I did not use the 3D printer. I observed from a distance. I didn't have time to get into it and learn everything. But then when I started freelancing and taking on product design and development clients, that's when I was constantly using 3D printing, a ton, all the materials. And the company that we printed with is a company that we ended up acquiring and then rebranded to Makelab.
Great. Thanks, Christina. Ellen Kullman from Carbon.
Really great to be here. Ellen Kullman, President and CEO of Carbon. When I went to engineering school, they didn't have 3D printing, just so in that genre. I mean, 3D as it's meant to be. It's moving from prototyping into manufacturing, polymeric 3D printing, really a lot of innovation, a lot of things going on. I'm really excited to be here today.
Great. Thanks, Ellen. We're all excited to hear from you and Christina. And of course, Kay Martin, if you could introduce yourself.
Oh, thanks, Debbie. Hi, everyone. My name's Kay Matin. I'm the president of AlphaSTAR Corporation. AlphaSTAR is a high-tech firm that's been doing research and development for over 30 years. We're implementing computational tools for prediction of performance of advanced materials and manufacturing processes for additive manufacturing. We're also the proud owners and developers of our Genoa software suite. Genoa 3DP is an ICME toolset that simulates the material and mechanical, thermal properties and behaviors during your AM process. I'm really excited to be here, share with you my 30 years of experience as a small woman-owned business, working in a very large space that's actually primarily occupied by my male counterparts. With that said, I'll turn back to you. Thanks, Deb.
Thanks, Kay. Melanie, how about you? Last but definitely not least.
Hi, everyone. Melanie Ling here, co-founder and CEO of FormAlloy. We are an OEM for metal deposition systems. And my background is in aerospace engineering, and I came from the aerospace and defense industry. And our systems can make cool things like this rocket nozzle component. We made something similar for NASA. And so it's very exciting to me, coming from a technical background, to be able to now grow a company and make some really cool parts. I'm also, in general, just a 3D printing enthusiast, so I'm so excited to be on this panel. And I meant to wear my my 3D printed shoes that were made by Carbon, but I forgot early this morning to do that. But I will be wearing them tomorrow. They're very comfortable. So thank you for having me.
That's great. Thanks, Melanie. And I'm Debbie Holton. I'm the Managing Director of Industry Events at ASME, where we are also building a community around additive manufacturing in a lot of different industries, including some of the ones mentioned here today: medical, aerospace, automotive, energy. So looking forward to all the great conversations that are happening here today. So we're going to dive right in with our esteemed panel here. And we had so much fun in the pre-conversation that I'm going to love this live version as well. So as you can see, we have CEOs here in a variety of company sizes and types of companies. And one of my questions was, you know, how does it differ when you're in different sizes of companies, different types of companies, like the startup versus maybe the more established company? And I'm going to start with Ellen, as she's kind of worked through many different pieces of industry, different types of companies and different roles. Maybe share with us a little bit about how that shift, maybe even from DuPont to Carbon, and how different that was for you.
Absolutely. So I spent 27 years at DuPont, the last 7 years as the CEO and chairman. So 40,000 person company, multiple business segments, agriculture through industrial, you know, very global. And now I'm running Carbon, 400 people, tremendous innovation, very fast paced. I can tell you Carbon's a lot more fun than a large multinational. But, you know, it's interesting because business is business. The specifics change, right? But business is business. And the same things that you learned growing up, whether it's on the technology side or product management or in the business side, are applicable to big and small. The difference is the personal aspects of it. In a small company, it's much more about relationships. It's much more about building team. You can actually build a culture and really affect a culture very clearly, and that really can foster innovation, can foster creativity, and can really set a pace of play that makes a difference.
Great, great. Christina, tell us a little bit about direct impact as kind of a bit of a startup there. What has been your experience?
Yeah, so it's interesting when Ellen said that, you know, we really have a direct impact on the culture. I find that to be so incredibly true for such an early stage startup. I find that for a startup, it's like being a CEO is really all about being the one daring to imagine, to visualize, and to do and execute when it's all super scary and uncertain. It's, you know, for me, it's all about that push and pushing others and really making those moves, especially when you're kind of like a nobody with no clout or social capital. You know, you're just getting your feet wet in an industry, which was me circa 3 years ago. You know, at the end of the day, you can talk all you want, you can wish all you want, but your team, your community, your network is really expecting to see action and fast. And with a small team, you could do that. And it's all about taking those actionable steps. Like, how quick are you on your feet, and how willing are you able to visualize fearlessly and then figure out the operations as you go, which as a small business, you want to make sure your operations are tight. But I find there's challenge in sort of letting go a little bit and being able to think very future and forward.
Thanks, Christina. Melanie, what are some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I mentioned I came from aerospace and defense, so I came from one of the huge players in that space and had spent my entire career there before jumping over to start FormAlloy. And one of the biggest differences is definitely the pace of innovation. And I love it because we can have an ideation session, which we do on Fridays, by the way, and our whole company's invited. And we can manifest those ideas if things come up very quickly within the course of weeks. So I love that we can think of an idea and we can execute it and we can make it happen very quickly. And there's not quite all the approval processes that you'd have to go through in a large company. So I love that aspect of it. Now, the other side of that coin is being a small company, you have to wear a lot of hats. So whether you're a CEO or you're someone that's doing the assembly work on the machines themselves, you don't just do, stay in your lane kind of work that you might at a larger company. So you have to be willing to be very agile and take on any jobs. And me personally as CEO, I have to be willing to do any of the work and any of the jobs that I'm asking my team to do because we don't have a large team to backfill if they're out, for example. So But that's another thing that I love about it, about being small, is that you do have the opportunity to wear a lot of hats and really expand out of your lane, if you will. So I love it. It's great.
That's awesome. Kay, what are some of your thoughts on that, wearing lots of hats and being in your organization?
Well, that's really definitely true. As a small woman-owned business, my experience comes from being a small business for the past 30 years. So I don't really have that big corporate, ideology or even experience to really gauge how different a small business is from how a big corporation acts. However, as a small business, we've been working with the big firms, with the big boys in the field, and I can see that the bigger corporations have a lot of red tape, have a lot of different venues to have to pass through in order to be able to get your agenda across. There's a lot of people that you have to convince. So the red tape, I think, builds up, and we're on the receiving end of that, because we have to wait for that process to complete itself. Whereas in a small business, you do wear, like Melanie was saying, you wear multiple hats. Things get done a lot faster. The decision makers are a lot fewer. You don't have to, really cut through a lot of red tape. Things get done, more efficiently, more effectively. It's a great environment. It's just very different. That's all I can say. It's very different.
Great. We talked a little bit about like visualizing fearlessly, driving innovation. Everybody in really every industry now, I think, is trying to drive a lot of innovation, but especially here in the 3D printing world. Ellen, tell us a little bit about Carbon, known as a very innovative organization. How are you continuing to drive that innovation, drive that entrepreneurial spirit there? What are some of the things that you're doing as a leader?
Certainly the pandemic has brought its share of challenges in that. And I was literally 2 months on the job when the pandemic hit, and we were shutting down our offices, our labs, our manufacturing, in the beginning, because no one just knew where this was going. Having the flexibility that we do in 3D printing, we could pivot. Our people started thinking about, well, how can we help? How can we make a difference? And, we had a webinar within days of California shutting down, and teaching our network, our production network, how to print a face shield, the frame for a face shield, how to print, even the swabs were in shortage. And of course there you have to get, they're medically, more specific than a face shield, and you have to go through the right authorizations and things like that. And we have great, great partners there. But it really was engaging people to, how do we help? How do we take what we have always said is very flexible, very resilient manufacturing, local for local, and prove it out in this time and place. A lot of our network is dental labs, and they all shut down, and they really, a lot of them started up printing face shields, donating them to their local community. Adidas was a great partner, is a great partner of ours, and they funded us donating face shields into places like the Navajo Nation, where there was real shortage on PPE. And I think that created just a tremendous coming together. And it was, so how can we make this work? Instead of an, oh, woe is me, this pandemic happening, the year's going to be bad. It was, how do we make it happen? How do we kind of create our own future? In any crisis, the only thing you have is what you can control. You can't control the economy. You can't control what state by state, is really different, and who could go to work and who couldn't. But we could figure it out, and our people really rallied behind that. And I think it's that can-do attitude. I think it's a lot to do with just how the 3D printing industry has evolved in terms of its, its resilience and its flexibility and its ability to pivot. And I think we proved that as an industry, and specifically Carbon was really proud to be part of that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I would say that I was so proud to feel like I was some part of this industry that was just responding in such an amazing way to that crisis that still we're somewhat in here of the pandemic, and how innovative people were, and the response and the collaboration that was happening was really just amazing. A lot of people said, here's where, 3D printing, additive manufacturing has now kind of come into this big spotlight again, to be that quick response to the supply chain where, the supply chain, has its challenges, right? Any other folks want to comment on that from the COVID response standpoint, or maybe some of the ways that your company has really kind of banded together in these stressful times?
I'd like to say something that's actually really, really important from, again, from a small business perspective. The output is not so much important for us during a stressful crisis such as we have had in the past few months. Not that it's not. Obviously, you always want to have the same amount of, effort going outward. But understanding the dynamics of your team, your employees, your coworkers, and what they're going through a pandemic like this, and what their issues may be, and how they either yield to some of these problems or just go with the flow and ride the wave and come out the other side. The psyche of people is a really big point in being able to ride this phenomenon really that we're having, because it's a global affair. It's the global economy is a lot more, compared to 100 years ago when this happened. The global economy is in a different place. It's a massive shift to maneuver, and having being able to tend to people's personal perspectives and encouraging them to write it out and giving them that hope and faith that it is going to be okay. We are all going to come out the other side. It is going to be a rough ride, but we are going to get there. Really helps. It's helped our team. I really try to keep that motivation within the group and support the team in that way, and everything else sort of falls into place. So.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Melanie, maybe you could speak to a little bit, what is the role of a CEO in times of stress and times of crisis? How do you really continue to have a healthy culture, a healthy company where people feel, respected and supported? How does that work for you?
Yeah, absolutely. The CEO is going to at least help set the culture and kind of drive. And what I'll say in general about setting a culture of innovation or during times of stress is that it needs to be purposeful. So, innovation doesn't just happen, and supporting employees doesn't just happen. You have to embed it into your culture. And when I say that, I mean embedding it into your business rhythm, including it in the words that you speak in your team meetings, and really make it purposeful. And we continue to focus on our core values as a company and keep our team focused on innovation and heads down, and knowing that if they needed support or time off, that was available as well. But we really stayed focused during this time, and in some ways gave our employees an outlet from all the other distractions that were going on. And again, I just think doing things with purpose and setting intentions for the team and driving that into your business rhythm and your goals and the words that you speak, that's what you need to have a culture shift or to focus on certain things like innovation and really make it happen, because it's not going to happen by chance or on accident.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Christina, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's a lot of listening involved, like Kay was saying, and there's a lot of acknowledging how times are different. So during COVID, it would be, at least for me and my team, I would have felt very ignorant if I were to just be like, hey, let's keep pushing. No, now we have a different challenge at hand. Let's pivot real quick and let's work towards that. Let's build out a system. Let's find a way to be helpful. Let's all get involved. And thankfully, everyone on my team was very happy to be involved. And like Melanie said, it's just setting that intention, acknowledging times have changed, setting that goal for that time period, and pushing forward.
Mm-hmm. No, that's perfect. And as female leaders, right? Like, is that different, or are we better at some of these? Some of our early conversation was like, we listen more, and we do. My husband would disagree that we listen. He would say, no, we do not. But what are some of those skills that you think that we bring to the table as women that they're specifically, kind of tuned in for these kinds of times? And Christina, I'll let you respond first. We'll start the other way.
Sure. Listening is definitely a big part of it. I think in business, you always need feedback, whether it's from your internal team, your employees, and your customer. Listening is a really big part of it. You need feedback and ground to stand on before you can execute, or you need them for validation points. Another thing I think that like women do really well is grasp the entire big picture and take that feedback, work it in, and really strategically and deeply formulate an executable and actionable plan of action. I think that's something that I've just seen, at least in my experience, women really excel at. And it's the women who usually take charge in those moments and can also really get a read on strengths and weaknesses across the team and formulate a plan of action.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Ellen, your thoughts. You've been in a lot of boardrooms. What do you think?
I think that the discussion all around the empathy side of it, that you really have to kind of put yourself in other shoes. My kids are grown. Well, they all came back during the pandemic, but
yes, they do.
Anyway. And I have a lot of, I'm not the average age of my employees, right? And they have a lot of little kids, they've got, aging parents, things like that. And I think that empathy is a word that we had to bring into the vocabulary front and center as we were dealing with this. I met all of our people's babies on Zoom, and actually, they were much better to deal with sometimes. They're very cute. But I think we had to make it okay. I think the one thing we as CEOs need to do is to say, it's okay if your kid's screaming in the background or the dog's barking, or if you've got to cancel because you had something come up because your child can't get the Zoom thing working for school. That's fine. We're going to be resilient. We're going to be flexible. And so I think as leaders have to lead the way there. And I think that's where, quite frankly, I think women do it a little better. I think we're willing to make ourselves vulnerable. We're willing to say, yeah, that's right. You do need to take care of that. You do, like during a board meeting last year, I remember my general counsel, was sitting next to me and she said, my mom was just taken to the hospital. And I turned to her and said, get up and walk out. Right? And it's a board meeting. I said, they don't care. They're going to tell you to go, and that has to be the attitude, because people can't contribute their whole self to the company if their family, is not taken care of first. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big part of it that I think we bring to it that differentiates us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. There's that phrase, and I'm going to butcher it, but it's about that people don't really care about what you're doing until they know that you care about them as right. people, that you're all rooting for their success and their stability at home and all those things that come along with it. My boss has a way of saying things to me where else the dog will bark or whatever, because of course Amazon's here every 20 minutes. And and he's like, you know what? That's real life. That's totally fine, right? Melanie, what have you seen with your group?
Yeah, very similar is, I think it's important to be bold and set goals and have strong objectives, but at the same time, lead with empathy and compassion. And if you do that, it will become part of the culture. And, that's the kind of team that we have here. And that's the kind of team that bands together in challenging times and makes things happen. So echoing more of what Ellen and Christina have said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Kay, I know in our pre-conversation, you had a lot of thoughts about the unique role of women as leaders. Maybe you could share some of those with the group here.
Actually, the ladies before me have said many of those things. So we're all right. on the same page there. But I think one talent that women have specifically is being able to listen and really listen. It doesn't mean hear the words, but hear the meaning behind the words. So I think we should use that talent a little bit more. We have an uncanny ability to read the tea leaves. and to understand really where the situation is or the non-situation is. And we should use those talents. And people, our opposite gender, our male counterparts, should really value that. They should understand that that is what we bring to the table. And that is a missing factor in many, many big discussions on many, many big important topics. And that they could really value that and get the benefits of having women participate on that level. So like Ellen, that's awesome. You've been in a lot of boardrooms, you've been there with the men, and you undoubtedly bring that value to your team. And Melanie or Christina, on a smaller scale, you guys probably bring that same value, and that is why you're there. That's why you continue to succeed in your roles. And I think more women should really pick that up and really use that innate ability in addition to all of our preparations, our education, our experience, our expertise, everything that qualifies us for the role. The listening aspect of it is something that just complements all of the other things. It doesn't replace, it just complements the whole picture. So I think that would be really good if we start using those, attributes that just come naturally to women.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, that's great. Really great conversation. You mentioned something, Kay, that I'm going to bring up to the group here, and it's starting to come up in the Q&A. So I see your questions there, and we're getting to them. One of them was about kind of the advice that this group would have for women or men who would like to be in their shoes one day. And one of the things I wanted to bring up was the idea of the gender gap in leadership in either corporate America, manufacturing, whatever you want to, whatever industry you want to pick. I'm sure you can find it. And Ellen, I know you work with a particular initiative called Paradigm for Parity that I think would be of interest to the group. Can you tell us a little bit about that and maybe some of your experience throughout time?
No, it's interesting because, and this all started about 5 years ago, where we were a group of women, all my age, sitting around talking about how do we get more women into and through into the C-suite and up to the, in terms of the funnel of leadership. And our realization was that if we didn't do something about it, who would? We were all successful in our different fields, and we all had experienced it from different ways. And so we formed Paradigm for Parity as a very practical approach to get companies to commit to gender parity in senior ranks by 2030. And in doing so, would implement a 5-point action plan. And, in terms of sponsorship, in addition to mentorship, because women with sponsors do move more quickly than those without them. Knowing your numbers and setting interim goals. If you're only hiring women or people of color at a lower level, you're never going to make progress. So do you know how many you're bringing in? Do you know how many you're attriting? Do you know how many you're promoting? It is at the end of the day about things like unconscious bias and having us all realize that we're all biased in certain ways, and we need to understand that and figure out how to work through that and create the culture in our companies that we want. And I've really enjoyed working with this group of people. It's now women and men in terms, and we've got like 130 companies, big ones like Walmart and Bank of America, and small ones like Carbon who have signed up to attain those goals. And, and in a small way, it's my way of giving back. And really, I came to it when my adult daughter was facing some of the same challenges just in the last 5 years that I faced in the 1980s. And so you sit there and you say, yeah, we've made a lot of progress, but have we? And I think there's a lot we can all still work on to continue to make improvement.
Thanks. Other comments on that, Melanie?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's amazing that you gave back in that way to the organizations, because I think it's really important to understand the difference between having a mentor and having an advocate or sponsor. A mentor is going to give you good advice, you can bounce ideas off of. An advocate or a sponsor is going to help you make those goals and objectives come to realization, whether it be because they are going to give you a strong recommendation or they're going to actually make connections for you that's going to help to get to that next role. So it's important to have both. Mentors are great, but also having a true sponsor advocate that are going to help you implement the plan that you come up with is even more key, in my opinion. I think the other important part of it is, I mentioned before with leadership, you have to be bold and don't be afraid to state what you want and how you want to get there. As women, at least in my experience, especially in aerospace and defense, it took me several years before I was comfortable being bold and saying, I want to do that job next. I want to work on that proposal. I want to lead this program. But once you start vocalizing it and letting people know you want to do it, it makes finding that sponsor or advocate to help you get there more. Because if you don't tell anyone what you want to do or write it down or advocate for yourself, you will never be able to find that advocate or sponsor that's going to help you get there. So again, be bold and find those sponsors or advocates that are going to help you implement your plan to get where you want to be.
Mm-hmm. Great advice. And thank you for explaining the sponsor versus mentor, because I think that's a really important distinction as well. Christina, thoughts from you?
Yeah, I echo a lot of what Melanie said about being bold. I'm a big action person, especially as a small business. I feel like a lot of the big moves and building my reputation as kind of this bold moves type of person is by making them. In a bigger company, I'm not so familiar, but I can imagine that one part of it is bold moves, whether it's making smaller bold moves and just gaining that reputation so people start to see that in you and recognize you as that person. The other part of it that comes from that is really, kind of like the advocates thing, but finding allies, right? And finding people that will support you and like maybe even help you create that space and field opportunities your way. And just building from there, you have to go up at that point. There's only so much momentum you can create that will get you to where you want to go.
Yeah, thanks. Kay, anything you'd like to add to this? I know this is a passion of yours.
Yeah, thanks to Women in 3D Printing, actually, this is exactly how we shine the light on the gender gap. First, we have to acknowledge that there is somewhat of an inequality, and then we find a way to address it. The global economy is just growing at a rapid speed. And women are right there at the start gate. We've got the skills, we've got the education, we've got the experience. We can run on that same turf as our male counterparts. Mm-hmm. And society in general is more accepting of women being in those key positions. And, so really the ceiling hasn't just been shattered. There's a fire hose of talented female leaders that are right at the gate, ready to go. So, I think the light is shining on that. I think, there's still a long ways to go. The culture has to change, and that's a different challenge. And I think we need to do that starting with our young girls in elementary school, like giving them that confidence, shining the light on them at that age. Is that, hey, you have the power, you have the confidence, you have the value, go for it. Whatever it is that they want to do, whether it's in science, technology, engineering, math, or whether it's in the arts, or, just encourage them, and that will build the culture. Not will it only build the culture from the little girl's perspective, but it will also allow their male counterparts, the little boys in that classroom, to start feeling that equality, as if, as opposed to growing slowly with that inequality in the background.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
I think thank you to Women in 3D Printing. That's a good step forward.
Yeah, and I was so excited to see an all-female speaker program. There's so many people on this program, and you kind of think, you're like, wow, you totally can do that. I mean, there's plenty of people that aren't even on this program. We could probably have like 10 of these we could do. And the good point about Women in 3D Printing, I think, and this is one of the questions from our audience, is it's a great formal/informal network, right? And so we're all there's a lot of folks working at home. We're all a little separated right now. How do you all utilize either Women in 3D Printing, other groups that you're part of, other networks that you have in this current virtual world to kind of both, advance your career, look for, opportunities? How are you doing that? And Christina, I'll start with you.
It's interesting. There's so many platforms out there, and especially in 2020, I feel like there's been a lot more that have popped up. Like Clubhouse is becoming viral, for example. For me, I like to see where is my community hanging out? Where can I reach them? And also the second part of that, like what medium do I feel most comfortable in? And when I have the stage or when I have the spotlight or I have a moment or opportunity, I just try to apply the same thing that I would do with my team. Set the stage, set the tone, try to make it feel as normal and okay as possible, try to foster those connections and ask leading questions that get people to open up. How do I lower those barriers to entry with people, so to speak? How do I disarm people? How do we make it feel as, I'm here in person with you as possible, and what can I do to foster that environment? And that's kind of like how I approach it.
Yeah, that's great. Ellen, how about you? What are some of the networks and things that you use?
Yeah, no, I think, the interesting thing is that the informal network was so strong when we could go out and we could meet somebody for coffee and we could do things like that. And I think in the beginning, back in March and April, we were really excited in doing that. And then it kind of waned, right? I mean, maybe it was summertime and we were out hiking and things like that because we needed to get out of Zoom. But I think it takes intent. I think it takes showing up. And, at the end of the day, sometimes when there's that group, that you just really want to connect with, but you're tired and you've been on Zoom for 8 hours, you just have to kind of go outside and walk around and refresh yourself and get reconnected. I've been a member of a group called the Committee of 200. I joined it back when I was a young business leader. And it was for entrepreneurs and women from large companies, of a certain size kind of thing. And I had great mentors there, and they couldn't sponsor me. They weren't in my company, but boy, did they really teach me a lot. And I learned so much from them. So now what I try to do is to give back, whether it's through Paradigm for Parity or through other venues to really share, right? And things like that, because the only thing I know in my career is that I do keep making the same mistakes and I'm learning the same thing over and over. And sometimes we all just need to be reminded of those things.
Yeah, very true. I'm going to try to get to a couple more of the questions that are in our Q&A, or folks are going to be angry at me. So Melanie, I'm going to leave this one for you here. How did you know you wanted to lead a company? Is it something you always strive for, or did you develop this goal over time?
I developed it over time. When I first finished my education, it was in aerospace engineering, and I assumed I was going to be very technical and kind of stay a tech fellow kind of route in a large company. But as I began the work, I really realized that my passion was more on the people side and working with people to do incredible things versus actually doing the design, myself and being excited about that. So that's what led me to be in more of a people role. And then I started also to love the business side. And as those things came together, I started to be more bold in my career and voice that I would like to run the business or a segment of the business at some point. And I was going down that path, but then this was just such a great opportunity, and the light bulb went off, and it was just something I couldn't deny. So one, not only did I get to pursue a passion and a hobby and turn it into a business, but I also got to get to my end goal of running a business more quickly than I would have with my other path. So it was certainly a desire and a goal that I developed over time, and it's definitely changed over time as well.
No, I'm sure, right? It's all ebbs and flows over time, right? Kay, how about you?
As far as starting a business,
have you always thought you wanted to run a company? Is it something you kind of just over time you decided to do, or?
No, it was, for me, it was an opportunistic, situation. When we started AlphaSTAR, it was a 2-man operation. We didn't really have a long-term vision for it. We were just winging it. Of course, when you're, in your 20s, you know, those things seem a lot more probable and not so risky. So it wasn't an intention to open up a company and grow it to be where we are today, but it did go that way. And it wasn't easy. There's a lot of challenges. There still are. But we've stuck with it. We've learned a lot of lessons. Like Ellen was saying, we've reinvented a lot of wheels again and again, and then again, you know, and learned those hard lessons. So experience, expertise is really what we've gained out of this. And now we are in a position where we are a player, you know, in the engineering, additive manufacturing, high tech space, and we can raise our hand and raise our neck and say, we know this, or we can contribute this. So it's a long road, and you know, if you have the compassion and you have that determination, you'll get there. So stick with it.
Yeah. Dedicated work, visualizing fearlessly, intentional leadership, all these great things that we've talked about today. One last question, which is like double the votes of anything else on the list. So I need to ask it, which is, what is your hiring strategy to attract more women to your organization? Or is this something that you're working on? And I'll send this one over to Ellen first.
Well, I can tell you that if women can see themselves in your company in positions of authority, in positions of management, they will come to you. The biggest, you know, when I was CEO at DuPont, one of my Japanese partners, the head of a very large Japanese conglomerate, when I was having dinner with him one night, said to me, you know, my daughter works for you. And I said, really? That's great. And she said, yeah. She wouldn't come to work for me because she said that she could never be CEO of my company, but she might be CEO of yours. And I sat there and I said, that's really interesting. And I thought about it. And if women can see themselves, you know, I just hired a new, you know, head of revenue, a woman, right? I hired a new general counsel, a woman. Now the guys in the company are asking me if I'm going to hire any men, but I said, I go for the best person, and I'm finding a lot of great women out there, right? Self in the top.
No, that's right. That's right. Christina, how about you? You're still in the growth phase. So what's the plan?
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like I haven't targeted a specific tactic, but I find that role modeling and being kind of like last time I checked, I think it's 90 or 95% diverse company does attract a lot more women to apply. There's something about it. And I, like Ellen, I just try to find the best person for the job. And a lot of times what I'm looking for more than just a task rabbit. I'm looking for someone with critical thinking, with leadership. And so what tends to happen is that's a woman. And it makes me so proud that I'm in a position where I can create space for other women, especially people who may come to Makelab and have no experience, but are hungry and passionate and want to learn all these different things. It brings me immense joy that I can create those opportunities and empower people, you know?
That's great. And all of you as excellent role models, I'm sure that your inboxes will be full of resumes tomorrow. So great conversation. Thank you so much to everyone. I apologize, we're out of time. I know we're all going to go and network after, so folks can find us in the networking area. But thank you so much for all your insights. Very pleased to be able to be privileged to have this panel today, and looking forward to tomorrow's program as well. So over to you, Sarah.
You are all wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time to share all of your insights, expertise, and experiences with us. I know you all hear it a lot, but you are genuinely role models to so many in this industry and without the industry. So we thank you all for taking the time to join us at the first Type 3D Printing Conference. We will be breaking now for the day to go to the main stage. So the people track will be finishing with this presentation now. Now, please visit our sponsors at their tables on the main stage for 15 minutes of networking before we go into our end of day keynote. And then the main stage will still be open for some more networking, more time with the sponsors for a little while. Thank you again to this wonderful panel. Debbie, thank you for moderating this excellent conversation. And everyone joining us, please these women up, follow them, network with them, and we look forward to having you on this panel next time as you follow their lead. So thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you on the main stage soon.
Thanks, Sarah.
Bye. Thank you.